Hello and welcome to the first episode of The Highs and Laws. I'm Angeliki Malizu.
I'm Kira Bukalan.
This is a show where we take you behind the scenes of one of the world's most misunderstood professions. Get ready to break down the myths and explore the real stories behind the legal world today. We have a truly exciting guest with us, Kira, don't we?
We really do. And what can I say? Today's guest works at one of the most recognizable companies in the world. It's a name that has become a verb that we use in our everyday life. So please welcome Agapi Patsa, Senior Legal Counsel for EU Regulatory Affairs at Google. Thanks a million for joining us, Agapi.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Agapi, one of the things I'm always curious about when I meet lawyers is what's their story? Was there an aha moment for you that you said, that's it, I'm going to be a lawyer?
I think it was a pretty unconscious decision. It wasn't well thought through. It was more of a family tradition. I have a lot of lawyers in my family. I had good grades and I entered law school. And I have to admit that in the first few years of me being there, I was wondering if I made a wrong choice because I just couldn't connect so much with my fellow law students. And also I didn't find a huge interest in at least the Greek system of law. I only found a true interest in the legal profession, I think, around my third year of legal studies back in Greece.
So one of the funniest ways to describe lawyers that I've bumped into along my career are part of these 5 archetypes of essentially legal motivation. So the first is the Savior's complex, which is an individual's drive or desire to fight justice. The second is the Midas touch, which are more motivated by financial motivation, financial gains. The third is the accidental tourist, which is pretty self-explanatory. The fourth, the legacy keeper. So lawyers who have gone into law to continue a family tradition. And then the final one is the intellectual's quest, drawn to law by the logic. So it sounds like you started as an accidental tourist.
I probably was an accidental tourist for the first year of my studies. Family influence has definitely played a role there, but I do think I evolved into the intellectual's quest category. And I have to say that was mostly through my studies during Erasmus, where I went for half a semester to Sweden in Stockholm, and I experienced another approach to legal studies, very much based on case law and discussion, compared to the Greek system, which was very much based on theory and doctrine. I always like to joke about this to people from other countries, but the reality is that in Greece, we might study contract law and they will never show us a contract. Or we might study criminal law, but we will never be taught about a specific big criminal case that went through in Greece. So I think that lack of practical application made it hard for me to see how. But after my experience in Stockholm, I really found the field so interesting. Perhaps that's why I pursue a career then abroad, because I wanted to experience a different approach to law.
It's pretty amazing how a single experience, the one of Erasmus, changed your entire trajectory. And I must say, it's a story that hits close to home for me too. I had a very, very same realization during my Erasmus years, and it looks like we're not alone. I was reading a study that first of all, it talks about how many babies have been born because of people who met on Erasmus. But more to our topic, apparently like 3 out of 4 Erasmus students, I think it was, say that their time abroad helped them understand their career path better. So yeah, as I said, not alone.
I totally agree. But finding your passion for law through Erasmus is one thing. Stepping into the legal world comes with a whole new challenge, and there's actually a lot of stereotypes that we see on the TV. Some people have this Ali McBeal image of glamorous and dramatic court battles, but as you know firsthand, reality can be really different. So, Agapi, what's the one legal stereotype that you'd love to debunk?
What shocked me the most from practicing law in Brazil, is that it's a very solitary profession. Like, You spend a lot of time alone in an office in front of your computer. That's why you really need to find interest, intellectual interest in the challenges and the questions that come up. Because if you're a social butterfly that wants to be around people and discuss and be out, actually, the way the legal profession is structured currently with billable hours and even in large multinational corporations with the amount of work, I don't think that it is a good fit for someone who does enjoy a lot of contact with people.
That's a fair point, and I totally agree with you. Moving on to something slightly related. Look, Brussels is the epicenter of EU decision making. And when a legal victory happens there, it feels big. Some people pop champagne, others like Harvey Specter in Suits pour a whiskey. So when you score a big win in your field, do you have a go-to ritual to celebrate? Or is it straight back to business?
I don't pour a whiskey. I wish I could, but I feel like I should be advising clients then. I'm a mom of 3, so my ritual is getting the kids out of the house as quickly as possible, and then just having a few moments to just connect a bit with what's happening in the regulatory space and the world more broadly, because I think that also impacts on my job. So I do love to get myself a warm cup of something, not whiskey, non-alcoholic, and then just read the news before I dive into work. My days, I'm not a great example of work-life balance, but these days with everything that's happening in the regulatory field, I think once I start working, it's down until the evening. Like I have a hard time getting off my desk. So I do enjoy starting my day, having these 15 minutes of calmness where I can drink my coffee and read the news around things that don't necessarily relate to what I do. I do love that. It relaxes me. When I can, I also try to do a little bit of a walk. So some of my calls I try to take while walking just to free my brain a bit. A breath of smell and fresh air always works.
That sounds lovely, ideal. So your mornings start with a coffee, catching up on the news. But once you dive in, what does a typical day look like? Or is a typical day even a thing in your line of work?
I don't think there is any day that's like the next one. I think after COVID, there has been an explosion of these calls without 5 minutes in between, where you wonder if people realize you're a human being that needs to eat and go to the bathroom. You have to push back sometimes against people who block your calendar one call after the other. And I would say that the big difference between being an outside counsel and working in-house is the speed with which you need to advise. So whereas as an outside counsel, your typical day would be lots of research, deep thinking, testing things with colleagues before you send a very well thought through advice to your clients. I think now being in-house, a typical day is really having the right reflexes, essentially, to advise your clients. So a lot of things you realize, this doesn't require me to spend, or I cannot spend 2 hours advising on that. I just need the right reflex to give the answer to my internal clients, or I have to go to outside counsel who will do the thinking for me. So it's a lot of on-the-spot advice. Gauging risk is a daily activity, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really resonates with me during my time as an in-house lawyer. So speaking of, say, typical days, you're saying that your work is already really fast-paced, ever-changing. But there is one thing that might shake up the legal world even more that's very topical at the moment. And essentially that's technology and AI. So where do you stand on this? How big of a game changer do you think AI will be for the legal profession?
When it comes to the legal landscape in particular, I think AI has the potential to be revolutionary. We have seen examples of having generative AI tools being able to summarize extensive documents or improve first drafts of legal briefs. I don't think we're at the stage where you can solely rely on, say, a chatbot to give you a perfect work product. The problem with lawyers always, I see that internally also, is that we are very good at advising on the risks of AI, but we are always the last industry to benefit from all of these technologies we advise on. I think this applies in the big companies also. I wish we would have internal tools that would help us in our job, but I think we'll be the last team that will benefit from those tools if they're ever rolled out. Definitely revolutionary, but I think there is progress that still has to be made for that to be a reality in our day-to-day job.
Happy, let's dream even bigger. If you could wish for any innovation, no limits, whether in law, tech, or even just making life easier, what would it be? What would you ask the genie?
Like AI trainee. I don't want to take the job from trainees. I love trainees. But even the cost cutting, having some sort of AI trainee that could do solid legal research and give me like a basis from which to start, I would love that. My little personal legal chatbot. That's what I would love.
Does that mean you would like somebody, you don't want to have to prompt and have to guide? You want literally this little AI trainee that just does it all for you?
I can prompt. I don't have a problem. There are all these stories, I think, from the US where someone used a chatbot and then there were hallucinations in the results they got and they submitted something to court that was out of reality, never happened. I would experience that. But I would love to have a tool that does the first cuts to even help the human trainee. I would love having a personalized legal chatbot. I haven't used a chatbot that's specialized in the legal field yet.
Now, speaking about game changing innovations, you live and work at the place where the legal world is shaped and changed every day. And it actually affects all of us, not only in Europe, but also all around the world. You have exposure to so many areas of law. So with Kira, we were wondering if you had to pick one that truly fascinates you right now, which one would it be?
That's the thing with working in Brussels. You get exposed to so many different fields of EU law. It's one of the things I love about it. And currently, what fascinates me, and I'm fortunate enough to be working on that also, is it's digital platforms regulation. There has been, I think, a huge shift to regulating the online space in the past 4 years. And yeah, it's been a wild ride because the Commission has been coming out with so many different proposals regulating all aspects of online space, from AI to online safety to cybersecurity. And I think that it is paradise for someone who loves intellectual, complex questions, because nobody really understands, I think, even the Commission itself. I don't think they understand how everything interacts. We are now entering a phase where we will be trying to figure out how it's going to be implemented and which instrument applies before another instrument. All of this process fascinates me generally, and given it pertains to a field of law, digital platform regulation that I really enjoy, it's sort of a playground. It's lovely.
Regulation sounds like a really big deal. Maybe a bit of a mystery to those who don't live and breathe EU law. So how would you explain it? Imagine you're breaking it down for people who, they use Instagram like, the average person. Why should they care about this?
Yeah, so it's more than just social media. Social media are top of mind for a lot of reasons these days. But digital platform regulation, platform is in the broad sense of the term, right? It covers essentially all online intermediaries. So all entities that intermediate between two groups of people, and those, they could be internet service providers, they can be interpersonal communication services, or just your typical hosting service like a tool that stores your documents online. It's everything. And the Commission has adopted a number of laws regulating those. What I'm mostly working on right now is online safety issues. These can relate to more than just online platforms or social media companies. These can relate to all intermediaries. To just put it very briefly, because I don't want this podcast to become boring.
That's the thing with law. It might sound boring, but then you realize that it affects every little bit of your life.
Yeah, it's exactly what you say. And I think that's what makes everybody passionate with that field of law, because you don't approach it just as a lawyer, you approach it as someone who is using those tools on a daily basis, or as a parent whose kids use those tools, from a reservation you make online to go out and eat, to getting information that could affect who you vote for during the next elections, like what show your kids watch, and if you approve the fact that your kids can access that show. Like all of these essentially boil down to a regulatory framework that people with similar concerns have put in place to regulate what's what. what use is made of those services, and how those services function in practice. So the European Union recently put in place this framework law called the Digital Services Act, which is this overarching online content regulation. And I think it's the first globally, it's the first like big piece of law that regulates the online space. It raises a lot of really complex questions, and I think we'll spend decades trying to figure out what some things mean. But it is a start and a necessary step to handling a very challenging environment. And I hope that at least as lawyers, we can also contribute to this debate, not just representing specific companies, but trying to strike the right balance for everybody who is accessing the online space.
That's so interesting, particularly as we left behind a year during which literally half the world was in elections, and we know how online information affected those. We also have intense debates on what constitutes free speech, what's online abuse. Do you also see other jurisdictions around the world being close to regulating in the same way as the EU?
I think that as we've seen in the past from other legal instruments like the GDPR, there is a tendency of other jurisdictions copy pasting EU laws. That can be understandable, but also dangerous in some situations because there could be provisions that work very well, for example, in certain jurisdictions with strong rule of law safeguards, but the minute you transpose them to other jurisdictions, they could actually be misinterpreted and misapplied. I don't think that people should discard like the value of legal tradition and a case-by-case assessment rather than just copy-pasting laws which have been adopted in different contexts. But we definitely see already a lot of interest from regulators outside of Europe on all of the legal instruments that the European Union has put out in the online space, because I think that the European Union has been quite um, um, revolutionary in regulating the online space. They have been gone in there first and regulated so many aspects of it. I think, depending on who you talk to, good or potentially creating a lot of red tape. We will have to wait and see what the effect of this regulation is, not just in the online safety space, but more broadly. We'll have to see how this relates to competitiveness of the EU industry and whether we see some rationalization going forward. I think it will all become evident once these things start being implemented in practice. It always depends on the political dynamics also, of course, what agenda people are pushing.
And you know what? Let's be honest here. Everyone at the end of the day has an agenda. Okay, so moving on a little bit, working in law, especially at the heart of the EU, decision making must come with some incredible moments, but also some real challenges. So, looking back on your career so far, what have been the standout highs and lows?
Let me start by saying I love private practice. So I really love the work in law firms, and I can see myself going back to a law firm eventually. But I do think that there are so many things that are wrong in law firms nowadays. I think entering the law firm world as a fresh law graduate was definitely a bit of a low, because I realized there were a lot of expectations around the fact that you are an associate, the kind of work you would be doing as an associate, or the fact that you are working in this bubble in Brussels with a lot of people from all over Europe, actually, or even the world. And there are stereotypes around where you come from. To give an example, when I was looking for an associate position in Brussels, I had gone to one of the big law firms here, and I did the interview, and someone literally told me that he doesn't think I will make it to the next phase because they had hired a Greek lawyer before and they had a very bad experience. If someone would say that to me now, I think I would have reacted in a very different way compared to what I did back then, which was just to even show understanding. I think of my reaction now and I'm like shocked by the way I reacted. I even showed understanding to that completely stereotypical and ridiculous statement made by a partner in a law firm in Brussels. That was definitely a low. I think a high was definitely when I got this job, because I really wanted to get it. I really wanted to have the experience of being in the center of things regarding tech regulation. The past 5 years that I've been at Google have been a high for me. It's an intense job, but I really love my job. I'm fortunate enough to be able to do what I love right now at this phase of my career.
And you know what? That's amazing because very few people can actually say that. You've definitely seen a lot. And so it makes me want to ask you, what advice would you give someone who's considering starting their journey in law?
I do these mentorship programs for university graduates, and I consistently say that this one thing that I think I accidentally did, mostly because, as I said, there is a preference for like British or Scandinavian lawyers in Brussels. So I would say don't focus on the firm you are going to. Don't try necessarily to enter a magic circle firm because it's a magic circle firm and there is a certain prestige with that being your place of employment. Focus on the people you will be working with, the team. Focus on people who will give you real tasks and exposure to interesting cases. And just, even if it's not the best paid job, just focus on the learning opportunity it offers. Because in the end, I truly believe that even if there's an economic crisis and everything falls apart, what stays with you is what you know and you learn. And the more experience you gather as a legal professional, the more easy it will be then for you to focus and do the things you really enjoy doing. So you might get the perfect contract in a magic circle firm paying great, but you might end up doing document review that teaches you nothing. Just move to the next job. Don't be misguided by this false sense of loyalty to an organization that doesn't really care for you.
With that, it has been a very, very insightful discussion. And thank you very much for opening up about your path. We asked you to share with us one of your favorite songs. Can you share a couple of words? Why? Why this song?
I really love Sufjan Stevens, and this song always relaxes me. So I play it a lot when I think it's one of my most streamed Spotify songs. I play it a lot when I walk. It's a bit smooth, so it helps me, especially when I go to work in the morning. I always play it. It helps me relax. It was by far Sufjan Stevens' concert that I attended once in the Netherlands was the best concert I've ever been to. So I'm a huge fan. I wanted to spread the love and the knowledge.
I love this answer. I must say, I was expecting some kind of pun that has to do with AI and the futile devices that rule our lives, but I'll take it. It's much better. It has been a real pleasure for us.
I hope the following discussions are interesting, and maybe we can do a roundtable at some point where we can talk about digital regulation and AI tech and everything with more participants.
Sounds like a plan. Now let's get back to our futile devices.
And with futile devices, we wrap up our very first episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next week with a special guest who's driving the shift from traditional law firms to cutting-edge tech. Will machines take over? You'll have to listen to find out. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a beat. See you next week.